So this is basically what most piano teachers know about swing. I always like to tease piano teachers because usually their understanding of swing doesn't go any further than this. But in fact, swing is so much more rich, so much more specific, and it's key. It has a lot to do with articulation. And so we're going to touch briefly on rhythm, but in fact, most of what we're going to talk about today is going to have to do with articulation and what you want to do articulation-wise with swing rhythm. But before we launch in, we need to say that swing is incredibly complex. I'm going to teach you a very good version of swing that's going to help. But let's read this quote. It says, "A musician's eighth notes are between him and his God, or her and her God." This is from Ethan Iverson, a great jazz pianist and educator. And what this is saying is two things. One thing, that eighth notes and the way that we swing is kind of sacred. It's really holy. It's really important to us deeply as jazz musicians, okay? And we want to be able to recognize a musician by the way that they swing. So it's very personal. On the other hand, it's saying that swing is going to be different and individual for each person, right? Chick Corea does not swing the same way that McCoy Tyner swings. McCoy Tyner does not swing the same way that Oscar Peterson swings. And that's okay. So while I'm going to give you some very good advice that I really suggest that you take, I also suggest that you reference the recorded history of jazz, because that is the authority. As great as I may be, and believe me, I'm a narcissist, I think that I'm really great. I'm not the expert. The recorded history is where we learn everything as jazz musicians. So please take my hints and then go and confirm them. Go and add nuance by listening to jazz really deeply. With that, let's dive in. Oh, wait, not quite. So some considerations that might change how musicians swing, and we'll talk about some of this, is what region they're from. New Yorkers swing differently than us over here in LA, although I identify more as a New Yorker. New Orleans has its complete own sense of swing. European swing is different than American swing. What's the era? Jazz in the 1970s has much more straight eighth notes than jazz in the 1930s. So these are important nuances. What's the style? We're going to talk a little bit about bebop today versus bossa nova versus ballad. This is all relevant. Tempo. We swing differently at different tempos. And then just an individual style, an individual's background. If you came from Haiti, you're probably going to have a different sense of rhythm entirely than somebody who comes from China, right? So there's all kinds of different considerations. All right, so this is the part that you probably know, is that in swing rhythm, each beat is divided into three parts, rather than if we're talking about straight eighth music, and straight eighth is the opposite of swing, then each beat is divided generally into two parts. And I'll read the second part, which says offbeat eighth notes are placed on the third part of the beat. We generally don't do much of anything on the second part of the beat. It's just the first and the third part where the action's going to happen. Okay. So you guys probably recognize this and know this, I'm hoping. If we see on the left, this very first passage, in straight eighth sort of music, we're going to play it with exactly even eighth notes. As we go to the right-hand side of the page, we're dividing 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. Okay. Now, the second line is probably familiar, but maybe a little bit, you might not be quite as confident, which is that even when we have rests, these still occupy 2/3 of the beat. The downbeat notes are going to occupy 2/3 of the beat, and nothing's going to happen on that second part of the beat. So here the eighth notes are still being swung. We should still be able to hear that this is swung, because now instead of playing 1 and 2 and 3, which we would play on the straight eighth note side, now we're playing 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3. So we should be able to feel swing rhythm, even if we have rests on the beats.